Hello, Hockey World. It is Thursday, June 27th, 2019.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Anthony Majoni from Sunrise Philly Magazine.
I'm Peter Tessier in ridiculously muggy Winnipeg.
No balmy?
Oh, it's balmy. Was the
You're gonna need balm.
It's gonna be 33 here. Oh, you guys need to know what that is in real temperature.
Yeah, isn't that like 180 or something like that Fahrenheit?
Yeah, basically goes up to about 85.
I have to say, Peter, I loved the temperatures in Vancouver. They were beautiful.
Yeah, they were.
Well, and people do care, believe it or not, about the temperature in Winnipeg because we get comments about it all the time.
From one guy, Frank. Frank is
Frank.
the balmy guy.
Well, Frank, it is balmy. It's uncomfortably muggy in Winnipeg. Frank. And it's awful in Philadelphia too, I must say. It's just
it's hot.
Yeah. It's terrible. Awful. Yeah. I'm can't wait to get to the shore for the weekend. I am going to camp out. Basically, I'm moving my computers, a lot of these screens with me to the Margate office for the weekend, so the family can enjoy fun. I can watch them play around me while I sit, and do nothing until Wednesday because of July 1st on Monday. But I'm okay with. I like the fact that July 1st is on a Monday. First of all, it's good for business for all of us. July 1st being on a weekend is in the internet world is never the greatest thing. So July 1st being on a Monday is a great thing, and I'm hunkered down. Like I'm leaving tomorrow morning at like 8 a.m. to go there, and I'm arriving 14 hours before my family, so I can really just like have it all together. And I can't wait. It becomes a very hermit-like existence. Kind of reminds me of like studying for finals in college. The whole thing. It just has that whole feeling to it.
Except there wasn't a question on Jonas Donskoy in your finals.
Yeah, and weird random people from Edmonton aren't making fun of me. That's the difference. Like back when I was doing my own finals for college, weird random people in Edmonton weren't mocking me the entire time. But now they are. So that adds a nice little extra sentence to the whole thing. But let's move on, right? Should we have RFAs to talk about, and and we know who Darren Dreger's source is not, because he's told us who it's not. And that would be
Paul Marner.
Came out and said Paul Marner, who would be Mitch Marner's dad, is not his source. And I never really thought, first of all, a journalist should never really use a player's father as a source, because that would be a little bit of a what do they call it? Conflict of interest there with the player's father being involved and the emotion of that goes into that. So, but the Mitch Marner crazy stuff going on right now, it is just all ridiculous. Like, let's just all admit the fact that he's not going to get $13 million a year from somebody. That's not going to happen. An offer sheet's not going to happen, because no one would give Toronto 4 first-round draft picks for Mitch Marner, even if the contract wasn't crazy. I mean, it's just like he's not that good of a player. He's a great player, but he's not like a 4 first-round draft pick player. And not like Herschel Walker here. We're not talking about like
Gratton.
Right, or Chris Gratton, right? Yeah,
Scott Stevens got 5. Wasn't it? Somebody had 5 first-round picks as compensation. I think it was Stevens.
That was when compensation was picked by the NHL like randomly. Remember, that was like.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Remember, you'd have an arbitration hearing about this when it happened. I remember when Peter Nedved got signed by the Blues, and the Canucks, they offered Yanni. Yanni wouldn't report. And then the Canucks wanted Shanahan, and they offered Jeff Brown. And so it was just a clown show.
Oh, it's so messed up. I remember the Flyers basically trying to avoid what they thought was a terrible ruling, and they made a trade. They traded Renberg to Tampa.
Yes. Yeah.
Remember this? Yeah. Which was a big deal, because as part of the Legion of Doom line, it felt like, why are we doing that if we're going to get Chris Gratton?
The Leafs signed a guy named Mike Craig from the Stars. I think it was his 94 or 95, and the compensation ended up being more than Mike Craig. Ended up being Peter Zezel and Grant Marshall. And Grant Marshall played for the Stars for a number of years. So yeah, I mean, this is a better system, but I have to say, and everybody's being asked this, on the noon show on Sportsnet, Chris Johnson and John Shannon were both asked. I did a radio spot in Buffalo this morning. I was asked the same thing. I don't think there are going to be any offer sheets. I think this is all bluff and bull crap, and this is leverage used by the agents, and that's why bull crap. It's being floated out there by through the media, and the agents are doing their job, and so are the media. So that's all fine and good. But in the end, I think that's
something to talk about. How there's nothing to talk about.
And we'll talk about it now. But I think it's
talk about how there's nothing to talk about.
Yeah, it's a load of crap. That's what it is.
Poppycock. Very good.
Balderdash.
We're good. We're good.
Shenanigans. All right, moving on. So yeah, I mean, I think what I will say again, and I do believe that this is something that is not being mentioned enough, so I'm going to mention it. The fact that there are no offer sheets with this group of players, which is like if there was ever going to be an offer sheet, it would be in this group of players. Because there are guys out there that people aren't even talking about. Like I spent an hour today talking about Matthew Tkachuk. All right, Matthew Tkachuk, is another guy, another RFA out there, who's like, and he's just sitting in Calgary, and no one's really talking about him in the whole thing, in the whole scheme of things. I mean, I'm sure they are in Calgary, but they're not really in the rest of the hockey world. And yet Matthew Tkachuk is another player who could be offer sheeted. The fact that no offer sheets are happening right now shows that the offer sheet system is incredibly broken. And the fact that that's how, because if it either shouldn't exist at all, or it's got to be fixed.
The interesting thing is that, I think it was John Shannon that said that he doesn't think that the top tier of free agents, restricted free agents, is going to get an offer sheet because the compensation is just way too much. But somebody in the middle, and the guy he used, or the name that was mentioned, was a guy like Brandon Tanev, Peter, is that, the compensation would be, I think if it was a $4 million contract, it would be a second round pick or something like that. It wouldn't be that onerous. So the odds of that happening with the ever tightening caps around the league might be something that works.
I mean, even if you halved the compensation across the board, I thought about this today, even if you made it half. So now the Marner, you'd have to pay first of all, there's already a problem because you have to pay a ridiculous amount of money for the other team not to match to start with. So that even taking the compensation out of it, right? In order to get Marner, in order for the Leafs not to match, you got to be probably at 11 million or 12 million, somewhere in there. And 11 million, they're going to get all kinds of pressure to match because that number's been thrown around and made like the reality of the world, but it's not. But 12 or 13, yeah, maybe. So even if you do manage to do that, which now you are taking away, you're also already, when you do that, by the way, you're trading a player, because if you go from like 11 to 13 million dollars, that's $2 million you can't spend on somebody. So that cap space is a player that you've lost. All right, so that's a player that's gone. Now, even if you had just 2 first-round draft picks, to say, not 4, but 2, and say they were over the next 3 years. Like I just found out the other day that these 4 picks are over 5 years. You can actually
you can start with 2021.
But even if it was just 2, even then, would we be seeing these offer sheets happen? That's my question. Like, would we be seeing, if we were at half the compensation?
No.
Would we see them?
Peter,
I don't know.
I want to get your thing on Tanev. Do you think that is a course that might happen? But then first round picks are extremely valuable. You see, we were all at the draft, except you.
Yeah.
We were all at the draft, and we see how much thought and how much anguish that these teams are using over, and how much a busted first round pick, a guy who doesn't pan out, how much of an effect it has on an organization. These are important picks. Teams are not going to give up 4 of them, even for a kid who's 22 years old like Marner. But what about Tanev?
If you're willing to, well, I mean, Tanev's a UFA. He's not even an RFA.
Okay.
So you can, but I mean, to your point, the whole thing about, if you're willing to give up 4 first-round picks, you might as well fire your entire scouting staff too, because you don't have any faith in them either.
Sure.
Right? Like that. What's that saying about your development process?
Yeah.
And I think one of the conversations that we had, I think at dinner one night, or maybe it was the afternoon after Saturday, was saying, why aren't we calling these scouting staffs not scouting and operations, but why aren't we calling research and development? Because that's really what they're doing, is they're researching players. They're trying to figure out who they can develop and go forward, and changing the lexicon around this, because the thinking right now is totally backwards comparatively to what it could be. But the risk factor is massive. But if you're willing to take that risk, it says something else about your organization.
No, it really does. I mean, the risk factor is insane. It means you don't have any need for your scouts, like you said, basically. And the fact is that younger players are just getting better every year right now. That more and more players are making impacts quicker. The first round is way better than it's ever been. Every year upon year, it gets better.
And you're getting a ninth, say for example, with Buffalo, Dylan Cousins, who's drafted 7th overall. He's probably going back to junior for a year. But at age 19, he might be in the NHL. And if he is, that's 3 years at under $1 million for a guy who at the end of that 3 years could score 20 goals. And then go ahead.
The cap era. I mean, at this point now, first-round picks are incredibly valuable. You've seen that obviously with Philadelphia, with both Konechny, hitting gold on Konechny and Provorov. Having them at a young age now, again, the bill has now come due on them, but they've gotten several years of productivity out of those players in a cap role where you have a Claude Giroux and a Jake Voracek making the amount of money that they're making at the top end of the roster. That's critical, and that's one of the reasons why first-round picks, teams are loath to give up first-round picks anymore, unless they feel like they're that one player away from being in true contention for a cup.
And that's it. You're right. And we saw, I mean, the stress, the absolute ridiculousness of how much Ottawa screwed themselves last year by trading their first-round pick, and how that whole year was just completely wasted by the fact that they were sitting around stressing about, where did they trade away Jack Hughes, like when they to Colorado. The fact that, Colorado ended up getting the 4th pick overall was the best scenario for Ottawa, right?
And they still gave up what could be a top pairing defenseman in that.
Oh, it's still an enormously great player, and so yeah, that just is just ridiculous. And I got in a discussion with this today with a GM who likes to mock me because I write about offer sheets, and it's a funny thing. I'm like, listen, I say I write about them because they're being discussed out there by fans as to whether or not they make any sense. I'm not putting out rumors that this offer sheet or that offer sheet's happening, and we haven't seen that from anybody. Yesterday, I guess we saw the closest thing. We saw a couple things from Pierre LeBrun yesterday that came out that said some RFAs had been in discussions with certain teams, but that's not an offer sheet. That's like far from an offer sheet, because an offer sheet has to be agreed upon by the player or the other team. I mean, when the Shea Weber offer sheet happened, he came into Philly, he visited in Philly, he walked around the building, he was at the practice facility. He was convinced by the Flyers that they really wanted him. He decided he really wanted to come here. It wasn't just him trying to pull up and make his number higher in Nashville. Weber really legitimately wanted to come to the Flyers. That was something that he decided he wanted to do. And of course the Preds had the ability to match it than he did. But that, so it's more, there's more to these things. And like we've said many times, Marner has to agree to an offer sheet, which is not something that's going to happen. So
well, it's not going to happen because, and if he gets pushed into this direction, then things would change. But the general perception, and I think this goes for most of these RFAs, and Anthony and Peter, you chime in after I get my point through. The perception is none of these players really want to leave the teams that they're with. Mitch Marner wants to be a Maple Leaf. He also wants to be paid. So he's using the offer sheet as leverage. His agent is using it as leverage. And that's why what Dubas said a couple days ago at the draft was a sort of a shot across the bow. He's like, we'd love to bring Mitch back. We want to get a deal done here. It's holding us back from doing other things. But if he signs an offer sheet, we may not be able to match it. We may have to take the 4 first-round picks. I'm sorry.
It was the first time that we have heard a GM that I can remember in recent history say that. Because the GM's general line is always, we will match anything that's thrown out there, which to me is very insulting to the player and the agent. Think about it.
Then just pay them what you're just paying.
Yeah, then just pay them, right? Like if you're the player and the agent, you mean I got to go through this hassle of getting the Flyers to agree to sign me an offer sheet for you to pay me what I'm worth? Like there's an element of that that's kind of strange, right? When the second team says we'll match anything, I respected Dubas for saying we might not match it because we're negotiating with this guy.
I mean, if you really wanted to mess with them, like you do it. You do a 2-year offer sheet, right? And then at the end you're UFA. Is that right, or are you still RFA?
For all these guys, it's a 4-year deal. 4 years walks them to UFA.
Okay.
So, I mean, one of the things that people have been saying is that, well, you could offer Marner, or you could offer one of these guys a 3-year deal, $10 million. The compensation wouldn't be the 4 first-round picks. It would be, I think, 2 1s and a 2. And it would also have the effect of putting whatever team that the player was offer sheeted into a bit of a quandary. But they would probably match, but it would hurt them. And that's the thing. If your goal here, if you're another team and your goal here is to hurt teams in your own division or hurt a competition, I mean, you can do that, but I think you're going to have some negative ramifications down the line. I don't think there's collusion here. I just think that general managers in this
there's
league,
collusion here.
No, I don't think there's collusion here, because the reason is because I think everyone recognizes that this restricted free agent offer sheets method is flawed and broken. It's punitive. If you sign up, it's great. If you want to, you never get the player that you want, and all you do is hurt the other team.
Yeah.
So why the hell do it?
Yeah, and but the whole thing of the one thing I think that is overplayed, and I was talking to Kevin Allen, and we just disagree on this one, is he thinks that these GMs have a better relationship with each other, and they wouldn't do it because like Paul Holmgren likes likes this guy or so and so, not Holmgren's not a GM anymore, but you know what I'm saying, that there's this great relationship with these GMs. That really is not what's keeping offer sheets from happening, in my opinion, from talking to them. That's not, they are willing to play the game.
Common sense.
Because people always go back to Brian Burke, with the Penner offer sheet, right? Which was like, was it Penner or who was it?
No, it was Penner. That was the
Penner, right? Okay, which is the last offer sheet that actually, I think, actually happened, right? Which is a very long time ago.
Yeah.
And he goes back to that, and and Burke wasn't mad about the offer sheet. But people always say, "Oh, Burke was so pissed off about the offer sheet," and he wasn't mad about the offer sheet. He was mad about the fact that he wasn't told about the offer sheet before it came out in the press. And I think, and could Burke's like, at least give me the common decency and say, we are signing your player an offer sheet, so I can know how to react to it when it hit as just a breaking story, and then Burke has to scramble and react to it. He didn't like that.
A barn fight.
Right. He didn't like that because that was and you can't blame him. He's like, give me a second to get a spin for my fan base, basically, so I can say this is we understand this is part of the rules. And it wasn't like he thought people don't have this great loyalty. Other GMs don't have this great loyalty to other GMs, in my opinion, anymore. Not as much as maybe they once did, especially because we have more and more young GMs, right? So there's more and more guys who don't have any, anything to do with anybody. There's no real connection to them. I mean, the whole American GM circuit is still there to a degree, but it's breaking apart. I think that, I think this is kind of, it's a kind of a pointless discussion, but we'll continue to discuss it because there are people out there.
There's a specter, always a spectrum at the minute.
It's out there, and it's a rule. And that's why I think that this will be a part of the next CBA negotiations. And I think will be a very big part of it because the agents are very pissed off about the fact that there's no offer sheets with this group of RFAs.
And we may be talking about this into August and September because the possibility of them just not signing and waiting is there.
Oh, we're going to have holdouts. I said that yesterday, and I believe that full-heartedly. We're going to have holdouts. I will have at least 3 to 5 significant holdouts, like Nylander-esque type holdouts that we saw last year.
Technically, it's not a holdout because he's a free agent. Yeah. It's an impasse. That's how
whatever Nylander was last year, I'd call it a holdout.
It was stupid, is what it was, but okay.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that that could be. I don't know who it's going to be, but it could be Marner. It could, and that's a disaster for Toronto because they just went through it. It could be Provorov. Very easily could be Provorov, I think.
Provorov, that's been kind of under the radar, I think, with all the is that Provorov is really, I think, he's waiting. He's waiting for the market to set, but the market could take a while to set.
No one wants to set the market, like we said. No one wants to do that. So it's everybody's wimping out on that and just sitting back and not doing anything.
Yeah.
And no one is taking the Kevin Hayes signing as like a benchmark for anything. By the way, that's the other thing. People are like, oh, the Kevin Hayes $7 million. No, that doesn't. GMs are kind of. It's funny, the feeling around the league among GMs and agents about the Kevin Hayes signing is confusion. They think there's way too much money. And they also say, okay, well, it's just a Flyer specific thing, is what I've heard. That's a Flyer specific thing.
Yeah. Right. And they're saying William Karlsson is a Vegas centric thing because he wanted to stay in Vegas and he took less on an 8-year deal. So neither one of them are considered benchmarks, but eventually something has to be considered a benchmark.
Yeah. And you know what? Who benefits from this whole thing of these holdouts are going to be like the free agent tryouts, the camp invites and stuff like that, which we're going to see. We're going to see a lot of them because there's going to be a lot of openings, I think. And last year we had a very successful one in
Alex Chason
in Ottawa. That's probably the most successful camp
in Edmonton. Yeah.
In Edmonton, right? In Edmonton. You're right. Sorry, yes. So yeah, I think that. So let's move on from the offer sheet world of La La Land to Roberto Luongo. Let's discuss him for a second, because Roberto Luongo, after the show yesterday, put out there that he was retiring. And I know Peter, you'll want to talk about this a lot, because being a Canucks guy, this is, I have my own opinion. Roberto Luongo, as far as a player goes, is one thing. Then there is the thing that is just the Roberto Luongo experience of him being a player / internet personality / and it's been fascinating to watch his development, because when I would interview him as a player before the internet, he was kind of standoffish, and I didn't know quite how to take him. He was definitely didn't like the media at all, I felt. And then but then he became like this character on the internet,
Strombone one.
Yeah, an anonymous internet character, which I can relate to and enjoy. So he's like an anonymous internet character for a while, and then he becomes a public figure, which I can also understand. And he makes that and I think that it's been a great experience to see the whole Luongo thing. I'm sure the Panthers, because they're smart, they're going to bring him in, and he's going to work for them at some point in some way, shape, or form. Because got guys like Peter Lugo down there that are going to jump all over this. Like this is
or the Canucks hire him just to because they got the cap recapture, they put him to work.
I mean, they could, right? But I think he's made
it. He's our Southeastern U.S. scout now.
Yeah, he's right. He's made it known that he's building a house and living in Parkland for the rest of his life. He's thrilled down there, right? So he said that very clearly. So Peter,
your teams in Tampa.
Peter, let's talk Luongo. What's your not epitaph, but your thoughts on Luongo?
I think one of the things that people sort of don't understand about Luongo was that he finally needed someone and a fan base to believe in him, and he found that in Vancouver. And that's when it happened, right? When he got traded to Vancouver, he became mainstream. He signed a huge contract extension, and he was now in a big Canadian market. He wasn't buried in Florida anymore. He wasn't the cast off of Mad Mike Milbury. He was now going to be a savior in a place that was a goalie graveyard for years. Like the Canucks and the Flyers might be the two biggest goalie graveyards of all time.
And they each had like their brief moment, like Kirk
McLean. And they each had brief moments of brilliance.
Kirk McLean was the brief Vancouver moment,
Richard Brodeur and Kirk McLean.
Exactly, right? Ron Hextall and
Bernie
Perron.
Yeah, Bernie Perron, right? So he came in there, and when AV came in, they changed the way the team looked. He was there with the rise of the Sedins, and if they never had Roberto Luongo in net, that team doesn't even get a sniff near a Stanley Cup final. Not because of Luongo made all the difference, but he was part of what made that team able to get there. Back-to-back President's Trophy winners. Yet somehow the weird thing about Luongo was, as much as he did, or as whoever he was, it was never quite enough. And in big games, it was never quite enough. And probably his crowning achievement in big games is that 2010 gold medal game that he almost lost.
He almost blew it. Yeah, he almost blew it.
He almost blew it, and then came back and saved it in OT before Crosby won it.
And before that, Peter, another one of the, which is a similar lines to that, was I think the classic Luongo game. And this is like a little bit, Luongo's been in the NHL for 19 years. So like a lot of people out there have no idea, would not at all remember his play in junior hockey. Like people who are watching this, you'd have to be at least 35 to really appreciate it. But so let me turn the phone off. Sorry. His junior game against Russia in the World Junior Championships was like one of the best games a goalie ever played. And they lost, but they lost in overtime. It was just that. Then that to me like epitomized Luongo's like thing,
Yeah.
Like he just was always good, but just slightly missed it.
Exactly. And the whole thing, like, you remember that playoff run in 2007 when he didn't come out to start overtime because he was sitting on the toilet. And
right.
And wouldn't that be a preview of the moment where they gave up the OT goal because he thought there was a penalty being called?
Right.
And the puck got shot past him. And again, in that game 7 against Montreal or against Boston in Vancouver, Luongo let the first goal in because he thought Bergeron was going to draw a penalty, and he didn't because he still had possession of the puck, and it went in. He was focused on the penalty. And it's those little things that will always kind of haunt him from, will be the asterisks in this great career. But yet the guy was all class in tons of situations. And maybe the only time you ever really saw something weird come out with him was the whole thing about talking about Tim Thomas in the final, and Thomas saying, I didn't know I was supposed to pump someone's tires or whatever, right?
Yeah. I was there for that.
That was probably the only time where you really saw away from the ice pressure get to him.
Yeah.
And, other than that, he was a class individual.
Yeah.
He beloved in Vancouver, and he actually took out an ad in the province today thanking the Vancouver fans in his time there.
That the time I really got to learn Luongo the best was during the 2010 Olympics, and being out there covering that for a specific 22-day period of time, and being around the team and being around Luongo, but more than that, being around the Vancouver hockey fans who just adored him. Because I'm sitting there and I'm writing articles, I feel like I should be slayed. I'm like, maybe Marty Brodeur should be the goalie. I was saying this stuff. I'm like, because here I am, the kid who grew up, watching the Devils take on the Flyers, and I'm like, Marty Brodeur is a pretty damn good goalie here. But he's the backup. And then the one game they put Brodeur in, if you remember, he struggled with a couple bad giveaways only because the Canadian defense didn't know what you do when Marty Brodeur has the puck behind the net, which is, you don't go to the puck. The way the Devils knew, if Brodeur had the puck behind the net, you wait along the sideboards and Brodeur passes you the puck, where, normally a goalie stops the puck, you go back and get it as a defenseman. There were 2 times that defensemen on the Canadian team just went back and did that, and they got crossed up and they ended up giving up a couple goals, and Brodeur's Olympics were over. But I was getting hell beaten by the fact that I was saying I think Brodeur should maybe be considered the guy for this team, because the Vancouver fans were so in love with Luongo. It was very much like I was watching Team Canada with the Vancouver Canucks goalie in that tournament, because the fans were they were Vancouver fans, obviously. So
I can't say anything more about Luongo that you guys have already said. So I need to sort of go to the ramifications of his retirement, because a lot of people in Vancouver, I think, are reasonably and understandably upset because of the cap recapture situation. And, this is something that is going to have to be dealt with other teams too, with Duncan Keith, if he retires early, or Shea Weber with that contract. I think somebody mentioned that if Weber retires 1 year short of the length of his contract, the Nashville Predators get a $24 million cap hit. And, that's obviously that will be extremely debilitating.
Oh, the Paul Holmgren poison pill.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. And the thing is that with Luongo, it's not like an onerous cap recapture, but $3 million for 3 years is a good player. And that's, when we were talking yesterday about Tyler Myers in Vancouver and Jake Gardner in Vancouver and what they're going to do, now there's $3 million less on their budget. That's a healthy chunk. And I think that's going to hurt them.
Oh, it's actually 2.2. Because Florida retains some too.
Okay, go ahead.
No, it wasn't 3. I saw something else about some math on this.
Cap Friendly had over 3. It's like,
then whatever. It's what well, I tweeted out yesterday, as a few other people did, Luongo's greatest save, maybe that cap hit prevents the Canucks from signing Tyler Myers.
It's a fair point. It's a fair point.
He did it for them. He loves the fans so much.
Wow. He has such as exciting as cap recapture talk is, he had such a and you're right, Mike, it's worth bringing up for sure, but I want to give Luongo a little more time.
Okay.
Before we get into the ramifications of how he's going to screw the Canucks.
Luongo is, I always go back to that 03-04 season with Florida, how he had a 9.31 save percentage and 2.3 goals against average, and he had a record of 25, 33, and 14.
Yeah, that was insanity. And the other thing about that he was so good there, and it was and watching him play, you were amazed that Florida team, like that Florida team would have been so terrible. I mean, just how bad would they have been without Roberto Luongo? I mean, they were bad as it was, but
games. I mean, that was just ridiculous. 8 games below 500, and a 93. Think about that. 93 over 72 games. He had a 93 save percentage.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Can you imagine? I mean, that it was crazy, and he was always like the quiet soldier about it. I think one of the more interesting things about his career that's not always mentioned is that he started off on the island.
Yeah, I'll go even further back than that. He was drafted with a first-round pick, traded by Toronto. It was traded.
Way to go, Leafs!
It was traded in the Wendell Clark, the deal to get Wendell Clark back from the Islanders. The Matthew Schneider Clark deal. They traded a first-round pick, and it turned out to be Luongo.
I love trade trees.
Trade trees are amazing, but you know the big thing about Luongo being traded was like this was like one of the death knells to Mike Milbury, right? Like this is like when Mike Milbury, who we all see now as like the commentator, the commentator, you know, like that we all see now on TV. He was the general manager who traded Luongo from the Islanders.
Yeah, so he could draft Rick DiPietro,
and then gave DiPietro a contract that was insane, right? And then, of course, DiPietro got injured, and that was just a disaster all around. But he did trade Luongo. He also traded Chara from the Islanders. So there's a couple of Milbury's finer moments.
He traded. I mean, look, Mad Mike Milbury, he's a legend for all the wrong reasons.
Come on.
Yeah, there's plenty of Milbury things.
Mr. Carol Alt, right?
And all of these things. And the funniest thing about Milbury to me, and right now, just this is total aside, is we all, like Anthony, you and I know Keith Jones. We know what he's really like. You know what he's like besides when he's not on television. You know he's what he is like. He is hilarious and a great guy. I just ran into him at the finals, and we were talking forever. And he's a funny. We're walking up the stairs because in Boston you have to walk up all these flights of stairs to get to the press box. And I'm following him behind. He keeps saying, "Yep, Flyers are gonna be interesting. Going to be interesting." He's like, you know, all those coaches. I'm like, yeah. He's like, Jones, he just kills you. You know, he just cracks you up. So watching Jones next to Milbury is incredibly entertaining if you know what Keith Jones is really like, because you're sitting there and Jones is so refrained. And there was a moment when Luongo was mentioned once, and I was watching them together, and you know Jones so much wanted to throw in about how Milbury had traded Luongo.
How did he get from the Islanders to Florida?
Oh my God. Yeah. He was because he's such a jerk in a great way, Jonesy. And, you know, and he didn't do it. He, like, to his credit, I don't know how, and I saw him about a week after that in the media meal room. And I'm like, how much did you, I said, how much did you want to say something to Milbury about Luongo? And he's like, oh, you have no idea. And it was just cracking me up. He's, you know, that's like, you know, yeah, that's the way. That's the way. He was
a player, boy. He was the dry. I swear that locker room. You knew something was coming in terms of like Keith just had that look on his face.
Oh yeah,
sort of slightly upturned grin, like here it comes, and it was just classic dry Keith Jones sense of humor that you would just be.
It's like the thing about Jonesy is like this incredible mixture of I'm not good enough to be here, but I am. And everything he does, like he wasn't good enough to play in the NHL, but he was. He wasn't good enough to be a broadcaster, but he is. Like he comes off like he's not good, and he's still we have the running joke between him and I, because we both kind of started at the same sort of time in this thing. And whenever we see each other at the finals, he'll say to me like, "Yeah, they're still letting us do this." That's like the joke, and I'm like, "Yeah, they're still letting us do this." It's pretty kind of crazy. Like he is that. Yeah. He's got some great stories. We got to have him on the air sometime. We do. He's amazing. All right, let's get to some rumors while we're here, because we do have to talk rumors.
Well, let me just mention one thing quick about the deal that was made yesterday. It's another example, and all we've seen over the last few days are these deals that are all cap related. The DeHaan deal to Chicago was Carolina dumping cap because they have depth on defense. Guys like Jake Bean and Hayden Fleury, they think probably can fill a role. And DeHaan was going to probably be out until November because he had shoulder surgery. Now we have the deal between Carolina and Vegas where they trade Eric Halla for Nicolas Roy, and I saw Roy play in the Calder Cup conference final against the Marlies. And he's an NHL player. He's a big kid.
Yeah.
I think he's almost ready, just like Sorella, who they traded in the deal with DeHaan. Carolina is trading like kids from their Calder Cup championship team who I think are ready for the NHL. And I don't particularly understand it because
what is the end game here? Can someone tell me what the end game is on this?
I don't know. For a team that's supposedly fiscally responsible and they have a number of young players who would be on entry-level contracts that would be cheap to trade them off, especially in that deal with Chicago. I mean, that may have been, trading Sorella may have been payment for taking DeHaan because they got nothing back in the deal. So I don't know what Don Waddell and
Eric Halla has been like everywhere. Like I like Eric Halla. I think he's an exciting player, but we always call him Eric makes you want to holla. He's just in. I mean, there's something about him that hasn't worked in a lot of places. I
think Vegas probably. Minnesota, he had his moments. I think in Vegas, he's had probably his best point of his career, obviously. At this point.
Yeah.
I mean, Carolina, because again, they've got this pretty decent sized contingent of Finnish players now that they've added.
Right.
I remember Peter and I were just joking about this, and this was mentioned quite a few times. They call it was Winnipeg.
Winnipeg.
Reporter. Now it's like
Minnesota.
It's Finalina.
Yeah, Finalina. It's unreal.
Oh, man. Yeah, really. That's it's true. I mean, does he think that this is one of Sebastian Aho's friends? Perhaps maybe this is somebody that.
I was wondering about that myself in terms of the connection between Aho and Halla. I'm not aware of any just yet, but
maybe Aho's maybe they're just trying to do everything they can to make things nicer for Aho so he takes less money so he stays or whatever. I don't know, but yeah, it seems like put a Finnish I mean, you can't go wrong with Finnish players, and the Finns have been rocking it lately. I mean,
from the Vegas perspective here, and we've heard the whole thing of them trading Clarkson and probably having to trade something for somebody to take on Clarkson's contract, and they in this deal they shave a couple $1 million off their salary cap. I know that Clarkson's deal has a heavy signing bonus on July 1st, so they may not have been able to move that deal until after they pay the bonus, and maybe they needed the cap relief in case somebody signs Aho to an offer sheet on July 1. So that might have been part of the motivation here.
Okay, yeah, I mean, maybe there's got to be something, because this seems counterintuitive to everything that we thought the Kings were doing, which we already thought was counterintuitive to what should be done. So I'm trying to figure out that should be two negatives making it positive, and yet it doesn't in this situation. So I'm confused by the whole thing of it. So we talked about Marleau briefly. Marleau being bought out and is going to like I said, I'm pissed off.
He's going back to San Jose.
He's going back to San Jose, whether he plays or not. He's going to San Jose.
I think he thinks he has a year or two left. I remember at the end of the season press conference in Toronto, he believed that that he still had something to give, and he at that point said he wanted to come back to Toronto. Now, I think being a free agent, I think his family being in Northern California, he might even sign a league minimum deal. He's made his money. He'll
definitely sign a league. I think he'll sign a league minimum deal.
San Jose situation, they're going to probably have to in the circle.
They're going to have to. They're going to ask him to do that, and he will, because he wants to play there. We knew he wanted to live there. I should have known the whole time. Like I said, just I'm really angry. But the thing I want to say about this, there's one other thing I think people aren't talking about with Marleau's return to San Jose, and that is that he is a pretty big character to bring back into a locker room. That has taken a lot of time to sort of form into the Pavelski and Logan Couture's room from Joe Thornton and Marleau's room, right? And this is bringing him back in there. I wonder how that affects Pavelski and with what's happening now with Pavelski.
I think from the reports that have been coming out about Pavelski doing his sort of tour, I think the ship has sailed. I think he's talking to Tampa. He's talking to Dallas.
Tampa can't sign him.
He's talking to Chicago. Well, I mean, it depends on what type of. If he's going out there and says, "I want to win a Stanley Cup," signing with Tampa for 1 year. The only thing that does, I mean, I believe Pavelski's birthday is in mid-July. He's 34 years old right now. He would, if he signs a long-term deal, it's not a 35 and over contract. If he signs a 1 year deal, next year will be the 35 and over contract, and then people might not be willing to give him more than 1 or 2 years on a deal.
All right, yeah, that's true. The cap or capture back callback. Yeah, I agree. That could possibly be the case too. But I think that, I mean, Anthony, don't you think there could be something with a room like this? I mean, this is definitely, you're not just bringing back a random player, you're bringing back a former captain,
iconic player on the roster. I mean, they could look at this as in a positive and negative manner, in that they've been close, got close to the summit with him, and this is a final opportunity potentially to push things over the top. I mean, San Jose's get fairly close, but they also have that whiff of a team that's could be very much on the precipice of being in a bit of trouble, certainly in cap world in this case. So, and again, losing Pavelski in this case, it definitely kind of changes the timbre of the room. Right. It's got to be different in terms of this now from Marleau coming in some way. You know, he does have a voice, but he also has to recognize the fact that certain younger players like Couture, like Meyer, they have to have those guys. He has to kind of defer a little bit to them, giving them the bigger bite.
The leadership group there is changing. I don't think that Marleau, if he re-signs there, is coming back to replace Pavelski. I think he's coming back to replace a guy like Donskoy, who's probably gone and signing someplace else. He's coming back as a third liner. He's not going to
back like Dave Andriachuk had been with Tampa in some way.
Yeah, but it's hard to do that when you've been so iconic in a situation like this, where a team where he is like Patrick Marleau's number is going to be retired type of player, like that kind of player with that team, right? And that kind of player, you know, not only does he come back and fill a spot for some young player potentially, you know, who could that's something that does happen too. Like there's some young player who won't play because Patrick Marleau is there, and that, you know, may or may not matter, but it usually does matter to the locker room and to things like that, because those players all kind of grew up together, and they're going to see Patrick Marleau and Joe Thornton. Honestly, two players there. They have two players, you know, 2 of their 12 forwards are kind of being kept around because everybody wants to likes them and feel like they should be.
Yeah, but I mean, do you really think that Joe Thornton wasn't effective, especially in the playoffs?
Oh no, and they both were effective last year. But
yeah, so there's no problem then. If they're effective,
they were effective last year. I mean, the question is, at some point, you know, players go down pretty fast. You know,
that's why you don't sign Marleau to any longer than a 1 year deal. I mean, really, the Sharks are in the power position here. They know he wants to play. They know he wants to come back to San Jose. They don't have to offer him a 3 year deal. It's going to be a 1 year deal.
But their history says that they won't. History says that the Sharks will not offer them a 1 year deal or Thornton a 1 year deal. You know, and that's the funny thing about that is that's. You know, I'm Sharks are kind of, you know, as you guys know, like where I'm a closeted Sharks fan because my wife lived there and I spent so much time out there for a long time. And the Sharks history is that and Doug Wilson has a very big loyalty to these two guys, these two players particularly. You know, he does give them more than they should make all the time.
Yeah, but I think what's going to happen is it's going to follow sort of the Zdeno Chara model, where, I mean, Thornton didn't make as much as he did 2 years ago. When Marleau signed in Toronto, Thornton basically took the money of both of them. Then the next year, when they had to re-sign, you know, when they signed Kane and they extended Couture and Vlasic, he didn't get as much. So I think, you know, Thornton's going to be back, but he's not going to be back at $5 million. He's probably going to be back at $2 million.
Yeah, but he really should probably be back at like 1.5 or 1.
Well, you know? Whatever. I mean, you know,
they don't have to make their money.
In terms of he's going to probably it's got to be respectful. It has to be respectful.
Right. There's that part of it too, and that does exist. These guys do have egos as much as they want to give, and the team has a respect. There is that, you know, that does happen. And there has to be money. You're right. It has to be respectful, but it also, you know, they're not going to come in and both say we'll both play for $500,000 a piece. It's not going to happen. And you know, because they are worth something to the Sharks too. Like people will buy stuff. Go ahead, Anthony. Sorry.
You have the possibility again of losing Pavelski's salary. You have the possibility of likely losing Donskoy in this case.
Yeah, Donskoy's gone.
He's going to be in high demand. for a lot of teams, I think, Jonas Donskoy. So,
and
salaries they got well up on. Say again, my Mike?
And they traded Braun.
Exactly. So that's
Braun, but
Justin Braun got dealt. So there's some wiggle room there.
Yeah, I'm again until Pavelski signs elsewhere. I am really not thinking that he's going anywhere else because I think this is a bit of a game that's going on. And it just feels like it. Like especially like where he's going. Like going to Tampa, for example, it shouldn't strike fear into the Sharks. The Sharks are going to be able to pay Pavelski more than Tampa can pay him, and at the end of the day. This is more like he's more like a UFA looking for an offer sheet in a way. It's kind of weird. That's kind of what he's doing.
And as a current was just looking at who's under contract, and I think they have 7 forwards at $25 million. They're 13, 17. Then you get some buyout numbers there too. So with current cap, they're about 14.8 million projected cap space as of right now. Before anything happens.
Right.
That's a situation right now.
Yeah, it's tight because and then they obviously made the Carlson thing was a huge thing for them to do. So I think that as this plays out, I just want to see with Pavelski. I'm not convinced. I'm really not convinced yet that's good that we're going to see anything change.
Now the other one who's doing his tour is Matt Duchene. Yeah. I know that he was in Montreal, and there was a tweet out about him. His family loving the Canadians. I mean, honestly, that may be the case. Do I think he's going to the Canadians? No.
I think there's a darn good chance he's going to the Canadians, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just getting. I'm talking about like my read and my feel on the situation.
Why would he not go to the Canadians?
Well, taxes are one thing.
Maybe you can compensate for that.
Well, they'd have to overpay him, which I don't think they're going to.
They might. They have the money to do it.
He didn't want.
Desperate need for a legit pivot, 1-1A pivot for a while.
Yeah. Right. So, then that's the thing. And Peter, let me ask you, if you're the Montreal Canadiens and the only way that you can get Matt Duchene is to overpay him, are you going to pay Matt Duchene $9.5 million? He's not a $9.5 million player. I don't care what anybody says. He's not.
This is a tough one. If I'm the GM, no. But my president of hockey may have been talking to my owner and says, you need to do something. And if the market says this, you might be forced to do it. And you might be talked into it. I would hold my ground and say it's better to wait. What I don't understand if you're Montreal is you've sort of had this weird kind of season, this weird kind of period where you've had to redefine what you are, get pieces. Why take up cap space with Matt Duchene without being a little savvier on some other fronts, right? Like that's sort of what I don't understand. And frankly, I think, and if Nashville goes down the road of getting Matt Duchene and they spend what that spend, maybe you can get him for the same money as Ryan Johansson. Let's just say, how does that help you re-sign Yossi? Like there's all these things. At a certain point in time, the Matt Duchene's in the world, someone's got to get smart and say, the market may dictate this because other players have earned this much, but it doesn't mean I have to spend it on you. And perhaps our GM's thinking that way, but there's always one who doesn't.
It would probably require Poyle to find a landing spot for Kyle Turris, because then they would have to clear that money to be able to.
It necessarily needs a task.
No, it's not.
No, it's not at all. Turris has not been very, very good. And people give Turris all kinds of credit for this with the World Championship stuff. Like it's just really funny to me, like how well he did in the Worlds this summer. Turris did okay. He was made the captain of that team, but I think part of that was
nobody else went.
Yeah, and a little bit of like Poyle saying, "Would you make this guy captain of the team because we need to give him some confidence?" type thing. That I kind of sensed that was going on, and I don't know. To me, I think that this is going to. I think Nashville, like I said, is not really a strong option for Duchene, in my opinion, based on what I've been told. So Montreal is a great Montreal. This is the perfect player for that.
But Montreal, again, they're currently hovering right now at according to Cap Friendly, they're at 8.71 mil cap space right now, as of right now.
Now, what I find,
they're going to have to make moves.
Now, what I find fascinating now is sort of the domino effect of right now it's Gardner and Myers, the two top free agents. We talked about them, but the sort of secondary market here where I know in Buffalo there was a lot of disappointment and there was not a lot of talk about Ristolainen being moved. And it's because the perception is that they're not really getting the offers that they believe Ristolainen is worth. And if they don't, then they'll keep him because then, Ralph Kruger comes in and maybe he can find something with Ristolainen that other coaches haven't. And then they get back the defenseman who a few years ago, a lot of people liked. Yeah. But they didn't get the offers. Now, the thing is, if once teams strike out on Gardner and Myers, where do you have to go here in terms of unrestricted free agents? There's not much out there. And then you may turn to Ristolainen, you may turn to Nikita Zaitsev and a couple other guys who are on the block. This market defensively is not that deep and not that good. So I have a feeling that if the Sabres still put Ristolainen out there, they might get an offer that they would find interesting. And I think that the Leafs are going to find some home for Zaitsev.
The Leafs are definitely going to find a home for Zaitsev, and there's no question that Ristolainen has a market out there for him. He's a good prospect, a really good prospect. Who some people feel maybe was rushed a little bit by the Sabres, but can still, he could do a lot of damage. There's as bad as this free agent market is, and people have come on and said this free agent. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think this is actually a pretty heavy UFA market. Yeah, especially but maybe not with the quote unquote star power up top, but some really good second, third, and fourth liners on this that are UFAs that are going to have a tough time getting paid.
Right, but that's not sexy. At 12,
it doesn't matter. It's still a team. We put a team together here.
Yeah, but at 12:01 when Bobrovsky and Panarin sign, if that happens, okay, you got Duchesne and you've got the two defensemen. Call it a day. It's Bob McKenzie's heading to his lake house.
Good. Let Bob go to his lake house. We can keep breaking the stuff here. Let's do that. Bob needs to give us some space.
For something humorous here from related to one of our most major free agents, Artemi Panarin. So Chris Johnson RT'd someone from MSG. There's a picture on the scoreboard of Artemi Panarin in a Rangers uniform. However, there's one little problem. Panarin, the edit shows him as being left-handed, and everybody's ever watched Panarin knows he's right-handed.
That's great.
So they superimposed it. That's all.
I'll see it now. Chris Johnson just did it.
That's excellent. What did they flip the picture? Is it him or not? Is it?
I'm out of here.
That's pretty good. That's pretty funny. I love it.
From our buddy Frank, he said, "Thanks for the balmy report."
Yes, Frank, we appreciate all of our regulars on here. I think that we appreciate all the regulars. We appreciate all the folks in the chat room. We appreciate all of you go to patreon.com/hockey and support the show. Not enough of you do that though, so help us. We need help.
Please.
Yeah, please. If you like this every day like we do, we want to keep doing this. And the problem is we're going to keep doing this. We can't sit there and tell you we're not because we just like it too much. But please help us. Just that's a friendly, nice thing on our side of things. Okay, get any value at all? Just give $1 a month. That would be wonderful. If all of you gave $1 a month, we would be fine. So thanks so much, guys. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We are going to be back tomorrow with one more show before the weekend, and then Monday we'll have the big UFA Day show. We're not sure what time to start that yet. Probably, I'm guessing somewhere around like 11ish or something like that, 10 or 11, because I think the whole thing launches at noon, right?
I believe so.
And I don't know. It'll be interesting if this year is one of those years where everything seems to be done ahead of time, which is like a couple years ago we had where everything happens like within the first half hour. I don't get that sense this year. I don't get that. I think a couple players, yes, but not many.
I think it'll linger on. I think we'll hear some things, and so a couple ones will break. But at the end of the day, I think the more the intrigue won't be the bigger names. Like, yes, always, Panarin and Bobrovsky will garner some attention. But I think it's some of these other names, these tier 2 guys, they're going to be fascinating to see where they come in on deals, because that's where it seems the market pressure is going to be. And if teams find ways to get them at affordable deals, it's going to be really interesting to sort of see who stocks up, who uses their limited cap space wisely rather than going big game hunting.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love that every year the free agents that are that turn out making a difference are not like the big game hunter free agents. And and last year the biggest thing that happened on July 1st was Ryan O'Reilly getting traded, to the Blues.
And turned out to be a pretty darn important deal.
Yeah, I mean that when everything was said and done, what are we doing this for? We're doing this to win a Stanley Cup, and that won a Stanley Cup. So, so it's not just UFAs. July 1st is a big trade day too, as we'll see again. We'll see that again this year. So, all right, that's it, guys. Anthony, thanks as always. Really appreciate you jumping on. Remember, folks, without the buzz, it is just hockey. I don't mean to not thank Peter and Mike as well. Thank you, Peter and Mike.
Of course, goes without saying.
Yeah, no.
I'm always overlooked.
Anthony's still done it. Like once you get to like 20 shows, you don't get thanked anymore. But Anthony's like still like
I'm like around 18, so
you're right about on the edge of that one.
And it's like yeah, you're here.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I did promise somebody I would throw a trade rumor out, a trade proposal out. And before we do that, let me do this real fast. So Jason in our chat room had this. Okay, I just want to get back. This is kind of interesting. Okay, would this make sense, Ek or Ant? He says. Provorov, the estranged Provorov right now, to Edmonton for Bouchard, a 2021st, and Puljujarvi. Too much? Not enough? What do you think?
Not enough.
Not enough, right?
I think Bouchard.
Edmonton has nothing. They like. How do you?
I like Bouchard. You're talking about 2 drafts from now. And Puljujarvi, I just don't know. No, I hang on to Pro.
Puljujarvi is a big Finnish question mark. He's had double hip surgery. There's always value there.
A Philadelphia-based person, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to fill 2 spots here. They're thinking Puljujarvi, you plug him in on third line with Patrick and Lindblom. And defensively, you're getting a higher level you're getting a pretty good level prospect. And the most attractive part of that deal is going to be Bouchard in this circumstance, but there has to be more coming the other way. A 2021 isn't going to.
No, 2020 first. 2020. So 2020 first.
Sorry. Honestly,
if you're going to give up next year's first round draft pick,
you know what I do if I were Fletcher, I'd counter with Provorov and Patrick for Draisaitl. Like that's what I would do. But you already signed Hayes.
Yeah, and if
sorry, Anthony.
Now they could have both. So there.
Yeah.
If a forward is being thrown into this deal, it's not a question mark like Puljujarvi. It might be a Yamamoto. It might be somebody who has less question marks, because I think you need at least two assets. And the thing is, Provorov is good in the NHL. As much as everybody thinks Bouchard is going to be a great defenseman, he hasn't proven it yet. So it's an unknown commodity.
Exactly.
I agree with that.
There's too much variance there. And again, next year's draft is reported to be a pretty good one, obviously, in the first round. Probably
Edmonton could be terrible. It's always possible that could be a really good first round draft pick.
That's likely.
What do you mean could be?
I don't know.
Could. Will.
I mean, you never know. I mean, would it be lottery protected, and all that stuff I think would play into it. But if it's not lottery protected,
how many times have we seen Edmonton bring in a new coach and a new GM to be the exact same thing? It's like the sun rising in the morning and setting in the evening. It's a guaranteed.
And humid summers in Winnipeg.
And balmy in Winnipeg. Exactly.
Maybe the answer is not the GM. Maybe the problem is not the GM. Maybe the problem is something above that. That's all I can say. All right, folks, we will be back tomorrow and Monday and throughout the weekend. Remember, without the buzz, folks, it's just hockey. We will talk to you then.